over the past, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. So we're doing a good old-fashioned Zoom recording. I will be sharing with you guys. Yes.
Yes.
And I loved our conversation in the Successful Woman's Guide to Love. And, something that I felt really stood out to me through, that was woven in throughout our conversation was the love identities that we give ourselves. And I'd love to hear, how that, hear a little bit more about, from you about how that develops and what we can do to break that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so powerful. I know it completely turned around my experience in the arena of love when I finally got that concept and turned it around. And I've seen it with thousands of clients. And it's actually, that term is a term that I'm borrowing from Catherine Wilbert Thomas in her Calling in the One work. I'm a mentor coach for Catherine as well. Yeah. And so the idea is that we have these unconscious things that happen real young or whenever we've had, not necessarily as a child, sometimes it could be, our first love in high school or whatever, where something really heartbreaking happened and we basically make it about ourselves. And it's what she calls our false, because it's actually not true, our false love identity, something like I'm not wanted.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sure.
Does that connect with the inner child, like how the little girl might view love as lack, love as I'm not being chosen and part of, okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we project that into our adult lives and in romance. And it basically creates, like if you actually deep down took away that, like something like, I'm damaged goods and nobody's ever going to want me. No man will ever choose me. Mm-hmm. So if you actually took that away, and most of the time this stuff's unconscious, we just think, oh, I'm grown up. I don't have that stuff. I did therapy. I did this and whatever. It's gone. Yeah. But it actually shows up if we didn't fully clear it out and go to what is false about it and recognize it's completely wrong. And I'm not damaged goods. I may have some things to grow in. But I am in essence perfect as I am, even in my faults. And I'm desirable and can attract an amazing man into my world. So it's like turning it around, but recognizing the very source of that false. It's what we believe about ourselves deep down in love.
So let me ask you this. Is it getting to the seed of it? Is it getting to the seed of like, okay, it started here. It started when, like I remember I was doing a live training. It was a while back and I was doing some neuro-linguistic programming, like in the training, and one woman she couldn't understand where the seed was, and right. You're familiar, so and she realized that getting her first heartbreak in her 20s somewhere, that she had this identity around love, and and then it kept having her repeat the same pattern. And whatever it was, like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not going to be chosen, or I'm not choosing. So getting to the seed, reframing that, what I'm hearing, reframing that, reprogramming it, and
And can I just add, sorry, I just interrupt you, but it's also looking at what are some of the things I'm actually doing when I'm dating or in the arena of love that reinforce that false identity. So for example, if you believe I'm not good enough, like you're going to be overgiving, you're going to be accepting that someone is overtaking, or, so it's like you'll miss the red flags of certain people you really don't want to get hooked up with, because they're going to be bad news for you down the line. And you
Right.
miss the red flags and all this because you're trying so hard to be good enough. So there's certain things we want to look at. How does the false love identity show up in the way we behave and our
So,
actions and
right.
choices in dating?
That makes sense. So
Yeah, and sometimes it's not just dating. Sometimes it's across the board, every part of your life. Not just
sure,
in the
sure. I
arena of
know.
love.
I mean, it's like the way there's the saying, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. So there might be some similarities around where you're not honoring yourself. So
Right,
what I'm hearing you say is, one, there could be some blind spots about how you're showing up in dating and what you're accepting as far as are you getting early attached, so getting really anxious, and maybe
right,
that results in overgiving, overcompensating somehow, like you were saying.
right.
And so what I'm hearing is doing the work to, like, reverse, uncover what it is that's showing up for you, so that you're shifting into a healthier, holistic way of being.
Absolutely. I so
Training,
agree with that.
right?
And,
Like
yeah, and keep reinforcing, like, let's say you believe you weren't good enough, then every day you wake up and go, I am good enough. In fact, I'm a gift to the world, and I would be a gift to emotionally healthy, amazing man in my life.
that's a
So it's
really
like
good.
really meditating on that. And if I truly believe that, how would I show up in dating? What would it look like for
Yeah,
me
so
to?
start to journal some of those things, guys.
Yes,
I would invite you guys to do that, like journal. If I gave myself this mantra, because basically it's a
it
mantra,
is like a mantra. Yeah.
affirmation, and I closed my eyes in the morning as soon as I woke up, like, I am worthy. I am so worthy of everything great happening for me. A
Yes,
healthy, holistic, loving, committed relationship
absolutely.
showing up for me. If that, in that, how am I committed to show up in the world, and looking for opportunities to show up in that way all
Right.
across the
And
board.
and I think that some of this also involves going to the source, like when you were wounded horribly, let's say as a child, let's say your dad left or something horrible happened. It's like going to that part of you, because she's going to get triggered in certain instances. Like, let's say somebody ghosts you that you thought you were starting a nice rapport with, and they just disappear, or, just things are going to happen that trigger those old feelings. And to have a rapport with our 5-year-old, our 3-year-old, the infant, whatever, wherever we originally were wounded around love, and to say, sweetheart, I'm here for you. I know you feel abandoned. I know you feel like you're not good enough or whatever it is, but it's not true. But like, have this rapport with that wounded part to nurture her and heal her in no matter what happens in our present life.
Right.
Yeah.
So continuing to nurture her, continuing to heal her as you're along this journey of
Right.
opening yourself up for healthier love. And, also that's where, people like you and I come in, right? Like, where we serve as a source and a guide to support those blind spots, to help in seeing that. I've
Right.
seen it so many times too, where women might be on the journey and doing the work, and then they start dating and they meet somebody else that they think is great, and then all of a sudden they're another version of the old unhealthy type of person, narcissistic or toxic in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And
Very true.
and it doesn't, and I think that women oftentimes get frustrated with themselves. They're like, what's going on here? Like, why isn't it working? Like, because we're all looking for a magic pill, I think sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Or we blame ourselves. We
we
think it's
blame
all my
ourselves.
fault. Yeah. And shaming ourselves.
And what do you recommend to that woman instead? If that were to happen, as she's on her journey, she's doing the work. What?
Yeah. Good question. That's such a good question. I think it's really about nurturing a relationship with our inner selves and developing that. So yeah, we're going to make some mistakes. We're going to maybe end up with another guy that does the same crap that the other guys did. Like we're going to make some boo-boos along the way, but it's like, that's how we learn. They're actually opportunities. So to
Really
be there for ourselves in a deep way and say, sweetheart, I know, like go inside. What are you feeling? Yes, you're realizing you've repeated the same pattern. And I'm going to help you get out of this. And we're going to go for the gold. We're going to go for the man, the partner who, matches me on all levels. And this guy doesn't. And yes, we kind of stepped in it again, and it's okay. Like we're going to learn from it this
right.
time and
And
we're going to
the
grow.
thing is that, usually if you look at it from a holistic place, you can look at, okay, wait a second. So what were some of the gifts in this connection?
Yes.
Were there some better things? Did they show up a little bit better? Because usually there's stepping stones of, oh,
Yeah.
he was really generous. He did show up like this.
Yes. You're right. So you're right. It often is about stepping stones, and we may not find the one right away, but we're going to be growing in that process.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
acknowledging that growth, and you mentioned this, and I feel like it's so, so, so important, is making sure that you not only, transmute that from a negative into a positive, like where, yes, nurture that inner self, that rather than shaming her, and then
Yes.
transmute it into, this is actually a sign that my man is coming.
Yes.
I'm learning through this,
Yes.
rather than going into what you were sharing earlier, the self-blame, the shame, because
Yeah.
that is only going to perpetuate more of the
Right.
negativity.
And another thing to look at, and this is so tricky to do when you're sort of new to all this work,
Okay.
is that looking at what might I have done. Like it may have just been 2% and he did 98% of the worst stuff that made it break down. But it's like, what was my 2% that contributed to this breakdown or to choosing this man that didn't have what I want in a man? It's like, where did I do a blind spot? Where did I look the other way? So the more we can recognize our part in having created that, not from a shameful place, not from saying,
Right.
oh, I effed up again. Or it's not that. It's more like, what are the little, sometimes it's really subtle behaviors.
It really is. It's like,
Yeah.
where were the things that I was showing up in my old pattern?
Yes. And believing I wasn't good enough or believing I'm not wanted and I have to somehow get him to want me or whatever it is. It's like, was I showing up in that space? If so, next time I'm going to learn to show up from, I am desired by the best man that could be in my world. Like I am going to be wanted and desired and cherished from that man. And I don't need to prove myself. I don't need to earn love. I just need to be in my authentic self.
And that's part of the reason too, I agree. It's part of the reason too why it helps to date and date different people, because then you're in the practice of being